He was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer in July of 2013. And in August of 2013, he died. So within that 6 weeks, to say it was a whirlwind and that I was overwhelmed and anxious, it's just an understatement. We prayed hard, and I felt really duped when he died. Like, God, where are you in this? Because my prayer was not answered.
When you go through one of these life-altering moments, you either run towards God or away from God.
I had come home. I was sitting on the porch waiting for this dog to do its business. And I literally thought to myself, like, you've hit rock bottom. Like, if you wake up in the morning and you're army crawling to the coffee pot, that is your red flag.
Hey, welcome back to the Good Grief podcast. And if you're joining us today, we're in for a special treat. I'm about to introduce a guest all the way over in the United States, some of our favorite people in the world. But if you're returning here for a second or third time, or maybe you've been listening from the very start, just want to say from Kaylee and myself, from the bottom of our heart, thank you. We couldn't do this without people on the other end walking and driving and walking their dogs and listening along. So thanks for being a part of our community. And if you haven't yet, just hit subscribe on whatever you're listening to right now, or a like. That would be incredible, so that we can reach more people going through grief, that we can help on this journey. But without further ado, I want to introduce my guest today, Miss Dana Lewis. And we connected over on Instagram, as all amazing friendships start, and she's been helping women lower stress and anxiety, and also lower inflammation in their body. And I know that I need this conversation because going to bed last night, there were a million things running in my mind. This morning, waking up, there's a billion things on my mind. And if I can manage my day better by looking after my body, I'm all up for that conversation. So Dana, hey, welcome to the show. Great to have you with us.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. And what a powerful introduction. I cannot wait to dive into the conversation. Thank you for having me on the show.
You're welcome. And hey, you're also a podcast host and creator as well, like us. And I think you're our first like podcast host, like duo, you know, like
I love it.
So you've got the podcast, and I love your podcast name, Stop Faking Fine. Where did that come from?
Stop Faking Fine, because after my husband died, I became the queen of faking fine. And then I really just started to recognize all of the little ways that each one of us fake it. You don't want to address what's happening. You stuff it down deep and you tell yourself you can do it and you fake it. And so I've launched this podcast just to kind of unpack all of those little things one episode at a time.
And you're a believer as well, like us.
Oh,
and
amen.
Isn't one of the best places to fake it at church? I mean, that's one of the most common places. Were you the same? Like that, you walk in, how you doing? I'm good, great, see you later.
Well, I mean, a huge part of my grief journey is that when my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer in July of 2013, and in August of 2013, he died. So within that 6 weeks, to say it was a whirlwind and that I was overwhelmed and anxious, it's just an understatement. There aren't enough words to put around that. But I walked out of the hospital and straight into a life of shock, of overwhelm. And during those 6 weeks, we had all of the elders of the church in. We took communion every day. I prayed over him, and I prayed really hard. We prayed hard. And I felt really duped when he died. Like, God, where are you in this? Because my prayer was not answered.
Totally. How have you, I mean, I just want to pause on that and say, like, that is such an honest reality for like so many people listening to this. I know that was the same for my wife going through the cancer journey with her mum, and feeling like, you know, having so many people around praying and warring in the spirit. Like, where have you come in those? And I know we'll probably just jump around. Like, I love
this conversation so much. I love it.
And our chat so far, you know, we'll just jump around. Like, you know, what are you, 11 years on now?
Mm-hmm. I'm 11 years.
I'm 12.
Yep. I'm 11 years out from that event, almost to the day. And I walked.
Yeah, sorry, what day was it? August?
August 31st.
Wow.
Yeah.
How are you doing? How are you doing now, 11 years on, and you've got like 10 days leading up to this? Where are you in now?
I think it's always a trigger. Like this month will always, as the days get closer, like the memories are there. And so that will always weigh on my heart. I think if we go back to you asking about just what I did when I walked out of the hospital, like I literally kind of put my Bible in the nightstand and I was like, sure. You want to know what, God? Like, I am super frustrated. Like, I still believe my kids go to a Christian, school, and I still believe, but showing up and being part of this relationship that we have is really hard. And it was really hard for me for years. I don't know about your faith journey. Like, how was that for you?
Oh, see, there's the podcaster in you firing the questions back. Look, I feel that when you go through one of these life-altering moments, you either run towards God or away from God. I felt I had nowhere else to go. I had nowhere else to go. And so like when I was at my rock bottom, when my family, my friends couldn't understand, my pastors, the people closest to me couldn't understand, there was nowhere else to go but to God. And so that's where I lent into, but not to say that I wasn't angry and pissed off and mad and frustrated and hurting, I took all of that to him. So
I love that. Like, I love that. And I love that you're able to be in that place. I definitely never stopped believing. It's just the daily devotional, the daily time that you get up and spend with the Lord, and the daily habits were hard for me to say.
I'd say that was, absolutely the same with me, for sure.
Yeah.
It was hard standing in church again when there was worship music on, praising a God that we know and believe to be good, yet has allowed this tragedy to come. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that, I didn't go to church for a number of religiously, like every single week. Like we took a little break. I found new habits, and we turned into, for a couple of years, the family that went on Easter and Christmas and this and that. And we slowly came back. And part of my journey is such that as I began to heal through my grief, I started to recognize that although my prayer was not answered, and I could only see that in the first few years because I was mad, that I truly believe that my husband's prayer was answered because he had a really strange combination of 4 strains of renal cell carcinoma, kidney cancer, that there was no proven chemotherapy for. And it was, by the time we realized that he had it, raging in his body so rapidly that, he died within 6 weeks, and we didn't have time to even try a therapy or do a therapy. Like, there was not time to do anything, because once we recognized that he did have this cancer, he literally died 6 weeks later. And I know for him, he was 40. We were 40 when he died. And I know for him that the minute that oncologist said, you have stage 4 kidney cancer, we do not have one therapy that we can recommend for the combination of strains that you have, you are probably going to die. And I remember him saying, I don't want that. Like, he was like, Dana, I don't want to lay in a hospital bed in our family room and have our boys that were 6, 8, and 10 at the time, like, have them watch me disintegrate. And so, as hard as it hurt for me, that's part of a turning point for when I could start to grow and lean back in to God and the church and those habits, because I just had an epiphany one day where it was like, you know what? I think his prayer was answered.
Yeah. So I wanted to know about that one day. Like, can you recall where along the journey that was? I can't imagine it being early.
No, it was like 5 years. It was like 5 years into my grief journey. And I think as long as we're talking about being in church and surrounded by a Christian community, I was not anxious in a bad sense, but I just had no patience. I was overwhelmed. We don't live by family. So I was a single mom of 3 boys that were 6, 8, and 10. So they're young. Soccer practices, 3 different places. You're doing this, you're doing that. You're at most of the time during that time, you're at 3 different schools because you're at junior high, you're in elementary. It's just
all go.
It just was a lot. And so to manage all of that was really hard, but I'm a doer, you're a doer. We're not quitters, so we're going to show up, especially for our kids. You're going to do whatever you have to do. But I recognize that I wasn't doing it gracefully. And that's kind of part of how I got started with like learning about cortisol and learning about inflammation and learning about stress. And it was a perfect combination of, these things colliding where I was starting to realize that maybe his prayer was answered and my overwhelm was starting to come down. And so then I just like a light bulb went off in my head. And I think in order for that light bulb to go off, my cortisol hormone had to not be at 1,000,000. Like my state of overwhelm had to not be skyrocketing so that I could actually breathe and use my brain. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. That's such an interesting picture of both of those levels, one going up and one coming down, to have that epiphany. Yeah. Or God just dropping into your spirit when you can hear him at the right time.
Yeah.
Because there's so much noise from what you're saying, the anxiety, the stress, the overwhelm.
It's noise.
It just creates noise. Yeah.
It's noise. And if you can't find tools to quiet the noise, then you will never get the Holy Spirit download. You will never get those downloads or the God moment in your heart because you are too busy fighting the overwhelm. And I didn't know how to get out of that place. And especially being a Christian, I feel like if you share with someone, well, I'm overwhelmed, I'm whatever, their answer is give it to God. And it's like, yes, that's a great answer, but it's yes and. Yes and here's how.
Yeah. So what was, I don't want to move from this point because I think it's very pivotal for so many listening, that 5-year moment for you where you just felt that release of, wow, maybe my prayer wasn't answered, but his prayer was. What feeling did that bring up for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, do you want to know the exact moment that I recognized this?
Please.
I was living in such a state of overwhelm and unable to kind of navigate my own grief journey. I was like, oh, Ryan, what do you think I should do? Oh, Callie, what do you think I should do? Asking all of these people, how do I grow through this grief? And a number of my friends were like, Dana, your boys don't have a dad. You need a dog. Like your family needs a dog. And I'm like,
wow, that's the next thing.
Yeah, I'm like, that makes sense. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get ourselves a dog.
Dog will fix it.
We're going to get, it's like the crazy, adults that are like, you want to know what to fix our marriage? Another baby. Like, I'm like, okay, let's do that. My boys were like all excited. Let's get a dog. And I have this puppy. I had 5 years in, carefully orchestrated my life so that each one of my boys had activities to do all day long to keep them busy and active and whatnot to make our family life work. And I had dropped them all off the places they needed to be. I had come home. I was sitting on the porch waiting for this dog to do its business. And I literally thought to myself, like, you've hit rock bottom. Like this is not what you need. And I think that pivotal point of like recognizing that and then leaning in to what God was placing on my heart. I feel like God said to me in that moment, like, girl, what are you doing? Like you're going everywhere to find the next step for where you should go, but to me. And that's what I was doing. I was faking fine.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And cleaning up poop.
and cleaning up poop that I did not want to do. Like I didn't want to do that.
Totally.
I didn't want to be there in that moment.
Oh, massive. Thanks for sharing that. What? Yeah, no one around but your dog to process that with. That's huge. So, would you say that was a crucial turning point for you in your journey towards health and towards betterness and faith? Was that a massive turning point?
All of the things. Like, it was a massive turning point for me to recognize that my life is my responsibility, and that this dog is not bringing me joy, and that I have to find things, a way to manage the stress and anxious feelings that I have. And that next step is not adding more chaos, because really what that dog was doing was filling my calendar with more things that I don't have time to process my grief. I don't have time to grow through the next thing because I'm busy, Ryan. I was busy.
Totally.
And I think we all do that.
And it feels good to be busy.
Yeah.
To especially through grief, is to block that pain.
Yeah.
To fill our calendar.
Yeah. You stuff that pain down deep, and you do it. I know I did it, and I know that I'm not the only one that fills the calendar to stuff the pain without even recognizing that that's what you're doing. It's so subtle and so subconscious until you wake up one day and recognize, like, oh my gosh, how is this my life? Like, I sat on the porch in that moment and I was like, how do I have a dog? Like, how has I did this to myself. How are we here?
Have you still got the dog?
No, we don't have the dog. We don't have.
Oh, you don't have it? Wow. There you go. I didn't know what to expect then.
Pivotal moment. So we only had the dog for a week. I actually had like a meeting with my boys to be like, who actually wants to help? And they were all like, yeah, not it. No.
Right.
They're like, I know I said yes 2 months ago, but I really meant no. And so,
but only if mum looks after the dog.
Yeah. So, like, just to make sure, like, to give closure to this conversation, she went back to the breeder and was adopted to a family, and she's actually with her older brother, and so she's fabulous. She lives on a big farm. Life is good. I'm not a terrible person. I just recognized what I couldn't handle, right?
Yeah. And, I mean, that's the reason I wouldn't get a dog. But, I mean, I know we're off topic here, but I've heard they're, like, worse than babies. And I'm like, I mean, after having a baby now, I'm like, I'm not looking after a dog. I've got enough stuff on my plate.
Yes.
So from here, like, I'm just curious, you have this, like, this download, but things still aren't right. So, like, what do you then, without filling, like you've talked about, I just try all these things to fill or to fix. From here, like, where do you go? Okay, I've returned this beautiful little puppy. Now I've still got 3 boys. I can't return.
I don't want to return them. I don't want to return them. Like, let's just share that.
Yeah, no, of course. But, like, how do you still move forward? You've still got to drop them off to things. You've still got a life to live, to support yourself. Were you working at the time? I haven't asked you that. Like,
all of the things. So I have always been in health and wellness. So I was teaching spin classes and other fitness classes at the time. And I did take a part-time-ish, like 30-hour-a-week job at the gym to mentor other instructors. And I loved that. Like, that wasn't filling my calendar with nonsense. Like, I loved it. And it was for a purpose, because we all need an income and insurance and all the things.
Totally.
But the pivotal thing for me, well, not even, like, part of the journey, as you asked, like, how did I start to grow from there, is that by degree, I have a master's degree in mechanical engineering. So I'm kind of a nerd. And I like science.
I love that.
And I like science. Like, I like science. So when my husband died, and again, I've been teaching group fitness classes since I was in college. So for years and years and years, always a hobby job, always an interest. We were always the healthy ones of our friend group. Like, I was making, the grilled chicken and the salad for dinner, and we were running 5Ks and doing all of the things. And my husband died. So I was like, clearly I've missed something of this health and wellness plan. So after he died, part of my grieving the way that I filled my time was to read. Like, where does cancer come from? I learned what inflammation was in that moment. I learned about healthy cells and unhealthy cells and all of these things. And I just started to apply different habits slowly. Like, I slowly changed our diet to be less of the fitness industry, look lean on the outside, but who knows what's going on the inside. Because my husband had muscles and a six-pack abs when he died. Like, you don't look like someone that should drop dead.
No, totally. Yeah, totally. Especially if you were, on the track of already feeding yourself what you thought was the right things.
Yeah. Well, what the whole thing about it is like what we thought was the right things. And he had a super high profile executive job at a big company. So he was very stressed. I
was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. He loved every minute of it, juggling, 1,000 things and assuming that he was fine and that he had tomorrow to manage the stress better. Like, I'll manage the stress better when I'm 40, or when I'm 50 or when I'm 60.
And that's usually the case when you're a high capacity person. He sounds like high capacity, able to be at home with the family, switch off from work, then go back and juggle all of the tasks and the people and the calls and the emails, all of the stuff.
All of the things. And
it's affecting you.
It's affecting you. He was the classic person, and I love him. Like, I still love him with my whole heart. But he was the classic person that was like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like, I will. There's no time for that. And even when he was alive, I am a high performing go getter type A human being, and we would argue because I would be like, oh my gosh, Jason, you are running on a life treadmill at 15, and I can really only keep up at a 12. Like, most people are running at an 8, but I'm already I'm ahead of the curve, but I can't quite keep up. And I started just to learn about stress and inflammation and the impact on the body, and that was just part of my healing journey. And as I learned and applied these things, my anxiety and overwhelm started to come down. And then I really started to grow through my grief. And so it was like, wow, I have really figured out this trifecta of helping yourself grow, because growing through grief is a job, and it's a big job.
Yeah. A big job, and there's many layers to it. And so I think, the body that we live in is a huge part of that, because it affects, everything else is affected by how we see things or how we feel things. And if we can not have the, fight or flight response, if we talk about that in just a moment, like the highs and the lows, if we can even that bell curve out just marginally,
a little
it makes
bit,
a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it changes the way we sleep, the way we think, our emotional response. Yeah. So let's jump in there, shall we? Where do we when you started researching, what came up first? Was it cortisol, just bang, or was it fight or flight, or was it stress? What popped out?
For me, it was stress, and it was, stress creates inflammation, and inflammation is the root of all evil, right? So we're all familiar with that term, and so I just started looking into I
think we forget it though. I'll be honest, I forget that, and I was a personal trainer, right? And so I don't think about that often. Stress causes inflammation. Inflammation causes sickness, illness, and everything else.
Yeah. Inflammation is at the root of every autoimmune disorder, every panic attack, everything. So you don't care until you care, right? And so in the years after he died, I really cared. And so I was like, what can I learn? What am I doing wrong? And honestly, I really felt, maybe embarrassed is not the right word, but I really felt like we were healthy. We were lifting weights, we were running, we were eating healthy. And so the only thing that he was doing that I was not was living this high stress life. And so I started to just really look into that. And I learned about, strain specific probiotics. I learned about the gut brain connection, that your brain is actually not in charge of every thought that you have, and that your gut is. And my mind was blown. I was like, tell me more about this gut brain connection, and about how if you can support your gut to support your brain, you can actually balance something called cortisol. And then I was like, well, what's cortisol? Like, let's learn. I had no idea what that was. And in the years after he died, if you would have said, you know, Dana, do you think you have stress resilience? I would have been like, what? I don't have time for your question. I don't know. Like, I don't, what's stress resilience? I don't know. And I think it's another thing that you just don't understand until you have it. And as I started to make the tweaks in our diet and I started to change up like the probiotic supplements that we were taking, I started to notice that I felt better. And my friends started to notice, like, talking about having no fuse. Like, we were in the driveway one day and one of my boys like shot a baseball up on the roof. It got stuck in the gutter. And, you know, he's not that he's a troublemaker, but he's the one. Like, we all have, I know that you only have one baby, but you'll get there. Everybody has one. That's like, oh, if something's going to go wrong, it's for sure going to be you. And it was him. And of course, like, the first thing he does is look at me like, what you going to do? Like, what you going to do? And I, in that moment, was like, oh, I mean, well, I'll get a ladder later. Like, we'll figure it out later. I'm not really sure. And I handled it like really, really well. And I didn't even think about it. But the friend that I was in the driveway with was like, what are you doing? When are you going to lose it on this child? Like, when are you going to make him go inside? When are you going to count to 5? When's he going to time out? And I was like, you know what? Like, we'll deal with it later. Like, this is like, we're having fun. We're in the driveway. And she literally was like, no, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing differently? And it was kind of, who are you? And it was in that moment where I was like, oh my goodness, like, the habits that I've tweaked through the gut, like with the diet and with the supplements, have given me this thing people call stress resilience. And now I can be in this crazy situation and not feel like I need to go sideways because I'm overwhelmed and I can't, like, we've all been to the place where you're so overwhelmed you can't handle one more thing. Like, it's the one more thing that makes you blow. And then after
straw
you
in the camel's back.
Yes. Yeah. And then after you blow, like, if you're a mom, you're crying in the closet, like, beating yourself up. Why can't I handle it?
Yeah. On that, can you tell me about mum rage? Like, something that I'll never understand, but like, I've seen you talk about it. Can you just explain mum rage?
Well, I think it's something that we all have to just not normalize, but recognize that it happens. And when you have, whether it's one child in a stressful job or you have a bunch of kids or whatnot, like, everyone's going, mom, 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 mom. And you're trying to do something else. And you literally have all of these things coming at you. And what the mom rage is that then you snap at someone that you then feel terrible about afterwards, because you're like, first of all, you look into this child's eyes after the words have left your mouth, and you see their kind of like shock and disappointment. And then you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I didn't really mean that. Now I have to retract. Now I need to apologize. And it's all based on the fact that, first of all, it's not your fault. Second of all, your gut's to blame, because you're not supporting your gut enough to support your brain in order to support that level of overwhelm. So the answer is so simple, but the problem is so real. And it's mom rage. It can be dad rage. It's all, I mean, I talk about mom rage because I'm a mom. But it's just having the anxious feelings. And it's not even anxious maybe so much as just overwhelm. Like, you're doing it all.
Yeah, so you're, what I'm picking up here is the difference between reacting to something and responding to something.
Yes,
that's the key difference.
100% reacting versus responding. Okay. And when you have mom rage, you're reacting. And I mean, I can remember like driving in the car and having 3 kids being absolute crazy people in the car. And you're like, I'm trying to actually drive a moving vehicle on a highway safely. And you are going to make us crash. And so just being able to manage that without screaming at people, hollering at people, throwing stuff into the back seat to be like, stop that. Like, having that stress resilience is really what it is.
Yeah, that's good.
That allows you to respond instead of react.
So tell me, this is so good. Tell me about some of the signs of, like, what would be some signs that you then could realize, oh man, maybe my cortisol levels or my stress is too high? What are some of those signs?
Oh gosh, like a red flag number one is I went to grief counseling a couple years after my husband died because I was like, okay, this is probably something I should do. I'm going to find a counselor and I'm going to sit there. And this man had the best ideas for how I could handle my overwhelm, my anxiety, all of the things. But I remember sitting there thinking to myself, I don't have 1 ounce of bandwidth to apply what you're telling me to do. So it literally was like I'm rubber and you're glue, and you're talking at me and it's just bouncing back to you because I could not handle, I cannot accept, like I can't soak it in. So if you are, whether you're grieving or you're stressed or you're just living life and you're thinking to yourself, I've learned tools that I'm really trying to implement and I can't. It's your cortisol hormone. Like it's preventing you. It's preventing you because you have no bandwidth. And I'm like, we're on a video, so I'm showing like my little fingers by my head, but you have no bandwidth to accept another thing.
Sure. Okay. So if that's red flag number one.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many red flags there can be. Red flag number two, like if you are habitually gaining weight despite your efforts, like you're just a little bit bloated. You're doing all of your regular things, but your body is holding on to weight. And mostly it happens in the midsection and in your face. Like if you see that, it's probably your cortisol hormone, because when your cortisol hormone is high, your insulin hormone gets jacked up in the process or hijacked in the process, and that's your metabolism. So then you can look to that as not necessarily a scapegoat, but to say, this is the problem. And the answer is not, you need less calories. The answer is not, you need to go run 20 miles instead of 10. Like if you're doing the things and you're not getting the results that you were getting, and you recognize that your stress is high, you have to learn to connect those dots.
Yeah, huge. Super helpful. What other signs are there? Because I know you've got lots.
Oh, there are so many. I think we can chat. Like if you're not sleeping at night, like if you can fall asleep. Yeah, if you can.
Because I mean, sleep is so crucial to our recovery or our ability to process life, let alone life and grief. So yeah, let's talk sleep. So broken sleep, length of sleep, quality of sleep.
Yeah, you need yes to all of that, Ryan. Yes, you need you need all of that. So your melatonin and cortisol circadian rhythms are so closely connected, and so your cortisol circadian rhythm needs to rise in the morning to give you the energy, the drive, the motivation, and it needs to come down at night. That helps your melatonin production go up, and they kind of work hand in hand, and you need your own natural melatonin for good quality sleep. And so from a time perspective, you're looking for 7 to 9 hours a night is your sweet spot. There are outliers. Like there are people out there that can say, "Oh, I get 6 and I'm fabulous." And
oh my goodness,
there are outliers, but for the mass, amount of us, 7 to 9 hours is the sweet spot. And if you're not getting that quality sleep, you are slowly deteriorating that cortisol hormone one night at a time. And then you month after month after year, you're like, oh, well, crap, now what do I do?
Yeah, you're already waking up depleted. It doesn't give you a good start to the next day when you got to deal with things. And I mean, melatonin, one of the simplest ways that I know is like getting out early in the morning to get that early sun ray. When the sun's just coming up off the horizon, it releases a whole bunch or allows a whole bunch of melatonin through the eyes, helps you sleep at night. Yep. And I know that because of our baby as well. Like you got to get our baby out into the sun so she sleeps better at night.
Yeah,
too.
To help
That's
her.
No difference for us.
No, there's no difference for us whatsoever. And getting that sunshine in the morning is key. Also, like to share tips for what you can do to help yourself is when you wake up in the morning, if you don't feel rested, that's a red flag that that your cortisol, melatonin, circadian rhythms are not in harmony. And one thing that you can really do is to wait 30 minutes to 60 minutes to have a cup of coffee. Like if you wake up in the morning and you're army crawling to the coffee pot, that is your red flag that your cortisol hormone is messed up. But also one thing that you can do to try to get back on track is to wait if you can wait 30 minutes at a minimum and 60 minutes is the sweet spot to have that caffeine, and what that allows your cortisol hormone to rise on its own without being interjected by caffeine and saying, oh, we're good. I'm only going to rise to here because we're good. We've got this caffeine, and the caffeine is going to take us on the rocket the rest of the way.
That is so helpful.
Yes.
I was literally, no joke, thinking about that this morning as I poured my coffee. The only difference is I'm drinking decaf.
Yeah.
And so
it doesn't matter.
Decaf.
Yes, it doesn't matter if
so.
you're drinking decaf. I also am a huge fan of a mushroom adaptogenic coffee, and so then that doesn't matter either because it's not caffeine. But if you are doing caffeine, and if you can get outside within that first hour, like go to the mailbox. Maybe you get your mail every day at wake up the following day rather than on your way home from work the previous night, and you walk to the mailbox and you get your mail and you come back in.
Good.
Just a little something to help support that stress hormone.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, this is so good. The coffee one I think is just so practical for so many because, I mean, at some point, if you've drunk coffee, we're addicted whether we like it or not.
Yeah. And I think that the coffee thing in the morning, for me even, it's more of like a romanticized ritual. Like
I think exactly the same thing.
Yeah. I just like it. And coffees shouldn't get as bad of a rap as it gets. It just needs boundaries. You need to have your one cup 30 minutes to 60 minutes after you wake up, and recognize that if we're talking in terms of cortisol, that one cup is it. Like you need to have your one cup and enjoy it, because if you are going to go cup after cup after cup after cup, you are slowly wrecking and continuing to wreck that cortisol circadian rhythm. And so then you have to ask yourself, at what point do you want off the crazy roller coaster?
Right. And something I learned recently about coffee is that it's got a half-life of 6 hours, which, when I heard of half-lives, it was always about geology and like dinosaurs and such. I'm like, wow. So what does that mean? I'm like, so if you have a coffee at 2 p.m., in the afternoon, 6 hours later, half of that caffeine is still in the system circulating around.
Yeah.
And to me, I was like, oh, wow. Because I used to do morning and then at 2 p.m., 3 p.m. coffee. And I was like, so I'm going to bed still with caffeine circulating. No wonder I've got a crap sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really huge. I have swapped all of my things. So in the afternoon, I do nootropics instead of caffeine, because it's waking up your brain and getting your brain to have the same kind of effects as caffeine without the cortisol disruption. Because when that is still in your system, even if you can pass out at 11 p.m., say, because you're so tired, you likely wake up at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. when the caffeine actually is done, the half-life is over, and now your body's like, well, is it time to get up?
What?
Yeah, now what?
Yeah.
Now what are we doing? Where's our next hit of, happiness? And that's not a fun place to be either.
No, totally. Hey, changing subject, I saw you mention something on Insta. I thought it was hilarious and so relevant. That's why it's funny. You talked about stress laxing.
Yeah. Because
I
mean, I don't know who can really relax. So I feel like it takes relaxing.
You don't know anyone.
Relaxing is an art, right? And you have to get to a place.
It's a practice.
It's a practice. So it's a habit, it's a practice, and you have to make space for it in your life. But every time we go on a vacation, and I posted that mostly for myself, because we get to the vacation, I'm like, yes, I want to be at this beautiful lake house and I want to enjoy. But here's my laptop, here's my phone, here are the 99 things that I'm doing. Or if I'm like, okay, I should be hanging out with my family, I'm hanging out with my family while my brain is going, but you're not doing all of these 99 things. And
for sure.
And being aware. The first thing in all of this is to be aware of yourself.
Yeah, self-awareness. That's right.
Self-awareness, and to say, how much does what I'm thinking about really matter in the grand scheme of life? And I can be present in this moment and actually relax. But it can take a minute for you to get to that place, because you come into any kind of vacation situation, or at least most of us do, amped up.
Oh, seriously.
Right? You're amped up because you're like, oh my gosh,
Takes
I've been
3
doing
days to wind down.
Yes. And so it's that. The first 2 days you're stress laxing, and then you finally get into a relaxed mode, and then likely you're back home. It's time to leave.
Yep. And then you need a break from the holiday when you're home. Crazy.
It's a whole thing. That's a whole thing.
No, I loved that. And so you recently as well, I don't know what it was that you went on, but I saw you were cold plunging and jumping in the sauna.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? Because big fan over here. Easier said than done. Like when you see a bunch of ice sitting in front of you.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience.
You tell me more. Do you do that on a daily basis?
Well, no, I don't. And here's the shameful part is that in our estate here, we've got a sauna. Okay. Ready and waiting 200 meters away from where I live right now.
Yeah.
But like, you've got to go and switch it on, and then you got to wait 40 minutes. So like, these are my excuses.
I was just going to say,
these are my excuses,
let's peel back the layers of this onion, Ryan.
So, so I'm just being totally honest. But we don't have a cold plunge. So when I do jump down into the sauna, we've got a pool there, and during winter, it does get down. I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but cold.
Yeah, cold.
And so, for you, if 30 is 0 for us, I would say it might be about 50.
Okay.
Like the water. Yeah. That's cold.
That's cold. That's very cold. I think the ice bath that we were in was more like 40. And
yeah, that's right. With ice for sure.
Yeah, and actual cubes of ice touching your body. Mm-hmm. So I'll be like, full disclosure, it is amazing for your cortisol reset. There are so many health benefits for whether it's an infrared sauna or a regular Finnish sauna, for just detoxing from life, detoxing from stress, detoxing from heavy metals that are, in the air and the land, and things that you just cannot avoid. So sweating it out is amazing. And then adding to that, the cold for your cortisol hormone reset is amazing. But I'll be honest with you, Ryan, I was not looking forward to going. I was like, okay, I know that this is good, so I'm going to tell myself that we can do hard things, and we're going to go. And the first time, I stayed in the hot sauna longer than everyone else did, because that's my jam. Like I could be in there all day. Like, I love it. I love it. Like, give it to me. And then everyone else in our party got in the cold plunge, and it was basically like my turn. Like I needed to go.
Right.
And I only lasted 30 seconds the first time. So 30 seconds is the minimum that you should be in, and the ideal amount of time is 3 minutes. And so I got in at 30 seconds. It takes a minute, and it takes practice to learn how to breathe, because you instantly panic, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so cold. And so I took, one of my friends was videoing, and I literally am saying, this is awful. Like, this is awful. Like, I don't want to be in here. And I lasted 30 seconds, and then I went back into the sauna, and I loved every minute of that. And then I did go back into the cold plunge, and I lasted the whole 3 minutes. And I will say that I actually enjoyed it, which I'm shocked to like. I am amazed by, really, if you can get over the scariness of it and the cold. Really, if you can get over the cold and sit in there, I felt so amazing after that. I could get into doing that on a more regular basis, because I really appreciate the outcome.
Yeah, you feel powerful, huh?
Yeah.
And the outcome is the key there, because looking at a bucket of ice, that's the most terrifying, horrible thing.
Yeah.
It'd be like standing in the Antarctic going, I'm just going to jump in the water. It's like no one wants to do that.
No.
But knowing how you feel after, and it takes the first time, I think, because that was your first time.
Yeah.
Like, realizing how you feel after it, you're like, now I could do that again.
Now I'll go again. And I think it's the same as, going to the gym, saying to yourself, I know it's healthy, but I don't want to go. But once you go the first time, it's not as scary. And then maybe you meet a
feel great
friend,
after.
you feel great after, and then you go the next time, and then you go next time. And before you know it, you've created a new healthy habit. And for that, like, I'm huge on habits and habit hacking and habit stacking and all the things. So
Oh, yeah.
I like it. I'm a fan.
And with the sauna, like the key is having a sauna there is such a blessing because to warm your core up.
Yeah.
The second time, the reason why you can stay in longer is because your core is so much warmer on the
Yes.
inside.
Yes.
And then the other thing is having people there with you. So there's peer pressure.
Yes.
Those two elements are really key.
Yes. It's peer pressure, and everyone else was having fun, and it was enjoyable. I don't know that I could get into a cold plunge in my backyard just straight out of the gate every day. I have friends that every morning, 6 a.m. they're jumping in there for a minute or two and they're ready to, crush their day. That's next level for me. I can aspire. We all have some place to grow to. That is not something I'm going to do tomorrow.
Have you seen Tony Robbins, his cold plunge?
Yeah.
In Florida at his house, that little square, and he just drops down into it's crazy. How did you feel? I mean,
that's next level.
Yeah. Next level. Yeah, totally. How did you sleep that night?
So amazing. It is so good. Again, for that, it's a cortisol reset is what it is. So if you need a plan to reset your cortisol hormone, go do the hot sauna for as long as you can stay in there, 15 minutes, something like that, and then do a cold plunge. Like, I slept amazing. How do you?
So good.
Yeah. How do you sleep on the days that you do it?
Especially that first time, I just remember having the best sleep. And I broke my back in 2010, and so I've got all this back pain, and so my back felt just incredible afterwards as well. There were so many benefits. I had ideas, all these ideas were coming to me.
Yeah,
I felt clear
because
in
your
the
brain
mind.
starts firing up. It's everything. Everything is firing at full capacity when you really shock that cortisol hormone by being hot and then being cold and then being hot. I was very thankful to get back in the sauna after the cold plunge because I was freezing, and I would have been really sad to just leave after that.
Yeah. And then leave the vacation or the holiday with pneumonia or something.
Right? Yeah.
What else was I was just going to say about cold plunging. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what I was going to say. Do you know what I was going to say? I don't know.
I don't know. I sometimes can read your mind, but not right now.
No, that's cool. So we've been talking about reducing stress, inflammation, cortisol. What haven't we talked about? I think the gut actually is probably one to chat about more because it's little known how much our gut affects the way we think and process things.
All of it.
Do you call it the second brain? Is that what you term it as?
Yeah, and I didn't coin that term. It's very common.
It's out there.
Yeah, it's out there. It's out there in books. It's out there in journals, things that you can read. But the gut is, the more science and the more research is done around it, the gut is almost your first brain and really in charge of telling your brain in your head whether to be anxious or overwhelmed, whether you're hungry or not hungry. And from a hunger standpoint, I think it's really interesting that you can repopulate your gut with different microbiome, like different bacteria that creates a different microbiome. And they're like little flowers. It's like if you're constantly eating, we'll say French fries every single day, you have little French fry flowers in your gut. And then when those flowers are ready to bloom, they're telling your brain, Ryan, we need more French fries because they need more fuel to kind of rise. And you can literally, people want to go on a diet because they want to lose weight. And then human nature is to try the diet, to fail at the diet, to beat yourself up because you couldn't stay on the diet, and then feel bad about yourself, which all of those things raise your stress hormone because you're stressed about the diet. Then you're stressed because you're not saying positive thoughts to yourself. You're raising cortisol, and
it's a negative feedback loop.
It's a negative feedback loop, and it's actually keeping you stuck in weight loss. And if you can interject into that gut microbiome the correct strains of probiotics that will literally flip the script on your gut, you can not only lower your cravings for French fries, but you can increase your cravings for other things like chicken or, beans or something else that's a little bit more healthy.
Sure.
And lose the weight without trying, because you've just changed your microbiome. And so I'm obsessed with teaching and sharing all things gut brain and gut brain axis, because it's also the easy button. It's the easiest way to make an impact for a result that you desire without needing a 20-step action plan and you know what I mean? And a journal and a log and all the things that you don't have time for.
And I'm assuming there's a big difference between good probiotics, average ones, and great ones, because there's so much out there.
Yeah, there's so much out there, and it's really, you need to know where they come from, and you need to understand the strains. So it's strain specificity. That was hard for me to say. But if you go to the grocery store and you stand there, or a supplement store, there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of different strains of probiotics. And a lot of them will say 9,000, CFUs of yada, yada. Well, if you don't know what those strains are going to do for you, then they're probably not serving a purpose. So understanding the problem you're trying to solve, and then understanding the strain that you need. So the strains that I know a lot about and that I've share are strains for mental wellness, strains specifically for supporting your cortisol hormone so that you can lower the overwhelm, lower the anxiety, turn on your metabolism, all of these things so that you can feel better, right? Lower the stress and anxiousness and show up for yourself. That's my jam.
Yeah, I love that. And some of the strains, the words are they're big words.
Don't ask me to say them. We'll put it in the show notes. No.
Okay. I was literally going to ask you to say them.
Lactobacillus, blah, 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 blah. Rhamnosus, one of them, but I will murder the pronunciation. Sure. And the thing about it is they have numbers after them. So you need to not buy just if you're buying a general probiotic from the store off the shelf.
Yeah. Is Yakult a thing in the States? Is that a
the
brand?
Cult?
Yakult. It's Yakult. YAKULT, I think. It's like a probiotic drink.
Oh, I don't know.
Stocked here in supermarkets.
Yeah. I don't know. My probiotic, the probiotic drink that I share is we can drop it in the show notes, and it's actually at danalewis.com/supplements. And all the strains are there and all of the things are there. But I've learned so much about the strains that a general probiotic, which I've taken for years and years and years because I thought it was healthy. But then, it does nothing. Yeah. Or at a maximum, what it's doing is just helping you go number 2. And so if that's your problem, then a general probiotic can help.
We'll solve that.
Yeah, we'll solve your bathroom issues, or it should solve your bathroom issues. But if you're looking to help your stress hormone and your inflammation specifically, then go check out those strains. I can't say them. Okay, cool. We can put them in the show notes. We'll put them in the show notes.
No, that's cool. We'll definitely do that. Hey, to circle back, you've shared about Jason and the journey there with him. You're now remarried.
Yeah.
And I'd love to just maybe as we close the episode, talk about that part of the journey as well, because I think that's so huge for men and women to consider that option again, and when that appears. What was it like for you?
Oh my gosh, I've actually done a couple of podcasts recently about this, but I did not start. I went on a handful of dates, obviously, before the 5-year mark where I got out of fight or flight, but none that I actually went on multiple dates with, because I wasn't in the mental place to actually want that. I couldn't handle another thing, right? I couldn't handle a dog. I was I can't handle a boyfriend. This is not where I'm at. But I think the biggest thing is in understanding that everyone has their own journey. Everyone has their own timing, and everyone around you, and this comes right back to stop faking fine. Everyone around you will have an opinion on what you should be or should not be doing, or like my now husband was not overly welcomed into anything because everyone was like, well, Jason was amazing. Well, yes, he was, but he's also been dead for 11 years. So like there is the moment. And Neil and I dated for, I think, about 3 years. And then we've been married now for 1. And it's just an understanding. I was ready. He was the right person. He, if you are going to date a widow or a widower, having the companion that is going to give you the space still for grief is a whole nother kind of can of worms. And so finding someone to do life with that is going to truly partner with you and meet you where you are. And that goes for the first time you're married and the second time. Just the baggage is different. The things that you need, sure. The things that you need help with and to have support to grow through are different. So I come at it at this point like super grateful for him and his support for me, and because the grief never ends. It just changes.
Totally. And was there anything like practically with yourself and Neil, like, or for yourself, like, where, when you said you dated a couple of guys, and then now you're dating Neil, like, what are you sort of looking for or asking to find out if he can hold space for you in your grief? Like, what were some of those
How
things?
many hours is this podcast going to go? Like, I think in a nutshell, it's just his reaction or your reaction to someone when they have a moment. Like when I have a moment or a trigger, a grief trigger, or something that kind of takes me down, and being confident enough, him being confident enough in himself and confident enough in my love for him that my grief is not taking away from anything that we have, but that it can help him learn a little bit more about my heart and, what's on the inside. And if you allow it, it can actually, it's helped our marriage to be better because he's learning those like deep rooted feelings, but you have to be willing to lean in at those moments and not lean out. And I think when you're dating someone, you go through a handful of those moments, and then you're like, this is more stress than it's worth. It's not a competition. It's just really not a competition. Everybody has to lean in is the best way that I can say it. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I just think it's such a huge, like you said, how many hours do we have? I think it's so important to touch on, especially with our family here at Good Grief, mostly women and many widows walking out that journey. And it's different. Like my mum, she's very much happily married to my dad still, and we're all happy for her in that. And it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen play out over 11 years, but different, and I'm so happy for you and Neil and your kids as well. I'd love to ask, like, sort of just as we wrap up, what are you guys as a family going to do? How will you celebrate Jason coming up on the 31st? Do you do something similar each year? Do you change it up? What do you do?
So for us, that's like such a good question. So I have never celebrated the anniversary of his death, so to say. Like, it's kind of a sad day that like my boys and I will talk about, and I'm sure I'll post about it on Instagram and whatnot, but it's not, we celebrate even in like the years right after he died. In the years after he died, I actually took my boys out of school on Jason's birthday. It was a national holiday. Like it was every time it was his birthday, it was like, what do we want to do? And we would drive, like one year we did in the United States, there's this, you can fly through the sky. I can't think of what it's called. It's like parachuting, but it's indoors, and you put on all of the gear and all of the air.
I know the one.
It's called iFly is the name of it.
iFly.
Yes. So like we traveled like 2 hours to go do that for one day, and that's kind of what we did. We really dive deep into celebrating his birthday. I always recognize our wedding day, and not that I brush it on his death day. I don't like brush it under the rug, but it's just something a little bit more. we don't necessarily celebrate it. So does that answer your
Sure.
question?
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. And I mean, celebrating the day is totally not the
Yeah. Not the right word.
wordage.
Right.
Yeah. It's like you celebrate him every day.
Yeah,
you know, in different ways, right?
It's recognizing that day. And I think that day, and even my anniversary to him, like as that date grows closer, and even this past year. So I'm married, been married for a year. July 25th July was my first anniversary. And as that date grew closer, I could feel the restlessness in my heart. And you can choose to stuff it. But I woke up that morning and without anything else on my mind, I was like ready to cry over my coffee. And it just kind of hits you and you recognize it. And again, it's a moment to appreciate it and understand that the feelings are normal and celebrate that. And I celebrated him, and you know, I had a cake with my boys, and I was like, let's celebrate what would have been our 25th. Like,
Wow.
coulda, woulda, shoulda, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, it's massive. And it's a work in progress, right? Like that. That's not a finite. It's like that'll continue changing and developing as the boys get older. They will have different understanding and relationship with their dad. I don't know if it's helpful, but for me, like I've found my relationship with my dad has grown closer in the 12 years he hasn't been here than when he was, which is just an interesting thing. So I would only assume it to be the same for your boys. They'll become curious and they'll want to know more. And how did dad do this? And how would he have? And I think that is just such it's a healing process of its own where it keeps Jason alive in so many senses.
Yeah. Yeah. And just trying,
powerful.
like being really intentional about how I can keep that memory alive and keep his feelings alive. I mean, even this past week, my 2 older boys are off to college. And so taking them to college, I bought each one of them a 12-pack of Pabst PBR, some, you know, lousy beer. And I was like, if your dad was here, this is what he would have done. He would have probably shotgunned one with you. I'm not doing that. I don't have that skill. But, you know, he probably would have done something fun. But talking about that and then just kind of saying to them, like, I'm doing the best I can. And I can't do all of the things that he would have done. But let's appreciate talking about it and, you know, having a giggle where it applies.
Oh, Dana, you're amazing. Hey, this conversation's been huge in many ways.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. And I'm excited. We're going to jump on your podcast.
Yeah.
And so like, we will pop the links to all of the things we've mentioned today down below. So you can find those. And who knows? I don't know whose podcast will come out first, ours or yours. So that'll be good fun as well.
Yeah. We'll see.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
We'll be praying for you and with you ahead of the 31st as that arises too.
I love it.
So,
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of Good Grief, and we hope you've been blessed by Dana's story and some of those insights. Far out. I think all of us need to go take a cold plunge and a sauna. I think that'd be a great way to end this episode. So go find yourself something cold to jump in, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.